So Benedict McAleenan joins us now, who's Senior Advisor to Policy Exchange's Energy and Environment Unit. Benedict, very good afternoon to you.
Hi, Nihal. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to have you on. How do you think, I'm loath to ask such simplistic questions, but capitalism can save the planet? And what type of capitalism can save the planet? Because I guess there's lots of different types of capitalism.
Sure. So, I think you have to start the discussion with looking at what capitalism has done over the last 100 years or so. And that is actually a really success story. It's a good news story. So we see things like, we've seen life expectancy go up. We see child mortality go down. We've all got more access to better medicines and food supply and
we live longer.
All of these sorts of, we live longer, absolutely. So it's not simply a sort of one direction into an abyss of suffering and disaster. Actually, it's a really positive story. What we need to do is understand which bits were successful and how we achieved those, and then have a sort of intelligent approach to the next challenges on our plate. And obviously, climate change, as Sir David Attenborough and Prince William have set out, is a major planetary challenge that we need to address. But we do know some of we have a lot of the technologies. We know a lot of the policies that we need to put in place. So this isn't sort of beyond the wits of man. We can absolutely do it.
What about putting, capitalism on pause or consumption on pause? What do you make of that, Benedict?
Well, so then I'd refer back to all of the progress that we've made using this brilliant engine of human progress. And saying let's turn it off. So you've been talking about micro versus macro,
yeah.
And so let's take it down to the sort of really micro level. What does capitalism mean to normal people? It means opportunity. It means access to better things over their lifetime. It means hoping for better things for their kids. All through investment in the future, invention, and learning from the past. And these things are made possible by things such as profit, because we use the profit we make from the last time we did something to do it a little bit better next time around. So we can apply those things to these new challenges. That is capitalism, and it is very much a micro thing. So if you say, let's roll that back, let's pause it, what you're really saying to the average man and woman in the street is you can't have as much choice in terms of the next job you get. You can't earn as much. You can't save for the future and invest in your child's future. We also can't have new inventions such as medicines or electric cars and things like that overall will make our world much, much better.
Why couldn't you have any of those things?
Because they're driven by, as you've been discussing already, people like Elon Musk, right? He looks at a problem like climate change and he says, right, I'm going to get rich by solving this major problem. He doesn't say, let's all wear a hair shirt and put a pause on progress. He says, how can I apply my engineering knowledge to give the world a sexier, better car that they're all going to buy, and I'll do well out of that. They'll do well out of it, and the planet will do well. So that's, obviously a very famous example of progress in action, where we're using this capitalist system to address the challenges that we face as a human race.
Right. Okay. So but then of course, when you say that it means that, you won't have a choice of job, for instance, well, Elon Musk provides thousands of jobs in a way that is also beneficial to the planet. So you just shift the focus from a certain type of capitalism which isn't good for the planet to a type of capitalism that is good to the planet. Is that a way of doing it?
Capitalism is about solving problems, and I think Tim was right that
also
most
creating
entrepreneurs. Well, it certainly creates them,
yes.
but then there's also a role for governments and for society. Absolutely, and lessons are learned over time, and of course we come up with new ways of creating problems. But that is part of the facts of life. What we can do though is say, look, we've got all these technologies and scientific know-how to study these problems and turn our public policies to addressing them. So we're doing it in the UK in a big way. And for example, the electricity system, we've had huge success in saying, okay, what's the problem? How do we decarbonize this? But you know what? We haven't said, all right, let's stop using electricity. We've just found a much better way of doing it.
Professor Jackson, I'm sure there's a number of points you wanted to come back in there.
There's also some points.
Say hello to Benedict, by the way. Say hello to each other.
Hello, Benedict.
Yeah.
There's a number of points, of course, that I agree with as well. I mean, I think the central point on which we disagree probably is the extent to which you have to have this capitalistic structure if you want any of the innovation, if you want any of the progress that we have come to enjoy and love. And there is a sense in which Elon Musk is driven by his own desire to become incredibly rich, but there's also a sense in which
he's doing good as well.
He definitely wants to, whether he is or not. We'll leave history to decide, maybe, but he definitely wants to, and that is true of entrepreneurs generally. It's the sense of them wanting to create positive change in the world and be remembered for it. It's like Bill Gates' foundation now is the biggest thing in his life, not the millions or billions that he made and the technologies that he created, but actually the sense of his importance in the world as someone who's created change for the good. Now we can have a big debate about whether actually that philanthropic aim, that aim of wanting to do good, is actually undermined by the same thing that created all the wealth which he's now trying to use to do good. I think the difficulty that capitalism creates, and it's a very profound one in a way, it sort of splits out people who make their income from profit and people who make their income from wages. And it actually sets up a contest between them. Because if you're an entrepreneur and you run a business, then your revenues are split between the profits to your shareholders, the investments that you make in future technology, and the wages that you pay to the people who work for you. So there's a kind of direct conflict between people who earn their incomes from profits and people who earn their incomes from wages. And what we saw, it seems to me, let's for the moment accept that capitalism has done some good things in society. But what we did see in the decades preceding the pandemic in particular was a decline in the relative proportion of that income that's going to ordinary people doing ordinary jobs, earning ordinary wages, which turned out in the coronavirus crisis to be the most important jobs in society. So healthcare sector, distribution, people in shopping malls and supermarkets, the people who kept society going, turned out to have been the most neglected people of all, and the people who we learned through the crisis were the ones that saved our lives, quite literally, through food and nutrition, through health and healthcare, and through the care of people in society. And that would be, to me, the biggest failing that I would place on the doorstep of capitalism, because it has failed to protect those who are worst off in society. And it's massively rewarded the richest in society, and increasingly so that division between the people who earn their income from profits and earn their income from wages has divided society. It is a part of the culture war, it seems to me.
Who should reform capitalism, Benedict? Should it be reformed from within, or is it governments, democratically elected governments, that should do that?
I think there's a couple of different roles here. So obviously you need leaders such as Elon Musk. You also need political leaders. Dare I say it, Boris Johnson going out and cheerleading for offshore wind this week was a fantastic move in the right direction.
Got 8 years to change it all, isn't it? 2030, we're going to have all our electricity needs.
Absolutely.
By that, yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. So we've only got a decade to put that in place, but that's doable. We've got a lot of expertise there. And the third role is for the consumer. And you and me, we need to vote with our feet and go to, if we want to see a better world, we go to the companies that are trying to make that happen. So I think that's absolutely part of the deal. We have a responsibility as members of society. Can I just go back to a couple of Tim's points on the pandemic, though, in terms of improving the lot of normal people throughout society, from right down to, the people who are the most vulnerable. Capitalism has and is still doing huge things for those people. And I started by talking about, child mortality, life expectancy, access to medicines, and all sorts of other life improving services. capitalism, in tandem with the state, has delivered all of these things, or many of them. In addition, when we've had this sort of big shock of the pandemic, it was supermarkets that continued to deliver. It was Amazon and online services who took on employment from people who had lost their jobs in other places such as restaurants and so on. So that sort of malleability, that flexibility is part of the service of capitalism as well.
But of course, I mean, the wealth gap is widening, isn't it? Which shows that presumably there is need for reform, because there is perhaps a voracious need to earn more and more and more. And that is, going back to Professor's point, that it's not actually delivering for everybody.
So if the wealth gap is increasing, you've got to ask, is that genuinely a problem? And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it increases discontent in society, which then leads to sort of, I guess, what you would call democratic rebellions. So, for example, a lot of people blame the election of Trump and the election and the result of the Brexit referendum on issues like this. So certainly, I recognise that there's a value in rebalancing some of the system, and that goes back to my point about political leadership. You do need to have a constant eye on these issues. You need to have the right regulators in place. You need to have the right policies in place to ensure that it doesn't go completely out of kilter. That is one of the sort of...
Do you need to separate also then political donations from corporations to political parties?
That's starting to go way beyond my remit as an energy and environment.
I understand that, but that's quite interesting, because you are talking about political leadership. But if political parties are in hock to corporate interests, then it will be very difficult, won't it, for political leaders, to put policies in that will harm the profits of said companies who are donating to political parties. So it is linked.
Look, I'm sure you've thought about it. It also goes back to the fact that we are not just consumers, but we're also voters, and we need to apply pressure to the corporations to say, look, this. If we want to improve the environment, then we need to vote with our feet, like I said, and go to companies that are trying to improve it. So, for example, what we're seeing is big oil companies coming out and saying, we're going to go net zero too. We're, BP, for example.
As DuPont did in America, I believe.
There's a sort of domino effect of these companies, because they know that if they don't improve their ways, they're not going to get the customers, and it's going to become financially unviable for them and reputationally unviable for them to continue with the same old ways. So, I mean, I'm an optimist that we are moving in the right direction on a lot of this stuff. But I think that if we tie our hands behind our back by sort of reining in market forces and that sort of thing, we're going to stop ourselves from achieving that progress.